Hello, I am Frank Howley. Welcome to the Neighborhood Game Club, where we master video games and future transportation devices such as the hoverboard. Today, I will be speaking with my friend Rodrigo, who appeared in my video Let's Watch, and he's great on Twitter at Reckonrod. On today's episode, we talk beat-em-ups, the importance of not selling your video games, we take viewer emails, 4chan vs. NeoGAF, and we talk about Gex and Boogerman. Video games, what are they about? Let's find out. Can I get someone to get me off this thing? So, get me off this?
What's up, man? It's Rodrigo. Welcome to my room, my safe haven of video games, and that very cute picture of me and yourself. As you can see, I have two TVs, 4K one, and I got this regular Sony one. This one I primarily use for like my PC and stuff, movies, and then over here I also use that for movies, but I use this for my PlayStation 4, my Wii U, PS3, any stuff that I can connect, it's all gonna go on 4K.
You are hardcore into Genesis, and I grew up Super Nintendo. Yeah. So I feel like this is like East Coast versus West Coast, you know, like meeting of the minds. We're gonna just talk and get over it. But before anything else, tell me about the Sega Genesis Lunchables.
Okay, so I guess when I was a kid, I really liked Lunchables a lot, right? So then I think I remember my parents maybe signed me up for one of those little events that they're doing. I somehow won this, and they showed me how to play like Sonic and find all these crazy little secrets.
Sonic the Hedgehog 3. To defeat the first boss, try to have the fire shield.
Most of the games that I have, mostly like PS2, GameCube, those are all in the box. So I don't have those with me, but I still keep them safe because you can't just sell your video games. You know, you always have to have them with you. So these aren't all my Sega Genesis games, but these are the main ones that I guess I've kept around. So obviously, as you know, I'm a huge Streets of Rage fan. I love Streets of Rage. It's probably one of my favorite games. Virtua Fighter 2, Sonic.
You got Back to the Future Part 3.
I do have Back to the Future Part 3. And, doesn't fall, I have Shaq Fu.
So what is your favorite Genesis game?
Streets of Rage 2. My Super Nintendo games. And the way I got my Super Nintendo was actually a cool story. My brother recorded the Thumb Wars videos, you know, with what's his name? Steve Odenkirk. Used to do the Compound movies. So he grabbed it onto a VHS tape, took it to school, and then I guess the teacher liked it so much he wanted to just say, hey, can I borrow this? So we let him borrow it. Next thing you know, a couple days later, he comes by the house with this huge bag, I don't know why, and he says, hey man, I accidentally recorded over your video. And we're like, what? And he's like, don't worry man, I got you something in return. He gave me his Super Nintendo with all of these amazing games, Mortal Kombat 2, Super Return of the Jedi, Legend of Zelda,
Alpha
2, Samurai Showdown.
What year was this then?
Oh man, whenever Thumb Wars came out.
99?
Yeah.
This was after Super Nintendo was over and people were willing to go.
Nintendo 64, and I got all of these games.
Do you have Glover?
I do not have Glover, but I have No Mercy.
Again, you have all your Genesis systems over here. Now, I've never seen the Nomad, so this is a portable Genesis? Can you explain that?
So the Nomad was released. They wanted to say, hey, you can play your Sega Genesis games on the go. So they released this, and the battery life is like 15 minutes. I swear to God, man. You charge it up for like 3 hours. You go outside, you play. You can't see anything, you know, because the screen is so dim. And then it just turns off on you.
Well, that's enough to get through 2 stages of Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
And this is the Genesis. What are these? What the hell is the Genesis? Is that just like a later model that's smaller?
Yeah, I guess this was the last version that they came out with the Sega Genesis. Obviously the third one. But, yeah, I have no idea why I own every single Genesis, but I got them now.
You're just a little Sega boy.
I guess so.
Alright, we got you have a lot of PS4 games already this early into the lifespan.
I do.
What have been some of your favorite PS4 games so far?
I would have to say probably Wolfenstein, The Witcher 3, obviously Grand Theft Auto 5 is a very beautiful improvement, and Dying Light. And I would say Bloodborne too.
You like Dying Light?
I like.
All right, we'll talk about that. We'll review that.
A couple of weeks ago, I just got a Wii U. I was asking people on Twitter to see what the essential games were. So they all recommended, you know, Bayonetta 2, Mario Kart, Super Smash Brothers, obviously. I bought Zombie U because I don't know why I bought Zombie U.
You like Dying Light, you like zombies, obviously.
Yeah, I guess so. And then for the Wii games, I just wanted to go back and look at the games that I didn't get a chance to play because I never got a Wii. But as you can see, the ones I got are just arcade ports and Mad World. Kind of big library of PS3 games.
Wait, is that a physical copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2? Can you pull that up?
Yeah, sure.
Was that physically released?
So it's not a game disc. There's no game disc inside. There's nothing. Just a little code that you can use to download the game. But I did get the retail.
Where did you get that?
I think I pre-ordered it online, from what I can remember. So, I mean, I had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for PS2. My cousin has it. Still hasn't given it back to me. So I was like, you know what? I'll just buy my own copy. So I did.
So now you have a physical plastic case with cover art that's just a code that's already expired with no disc inside.
That's right.
And you got some DS games. You got a Vita?
Yes, I do. I was one of the unfortunate people to buy a Vita. Although I really love it. I'm not going to lie. I love my Vita. I play my PS1 games on it. PSP games. The Vita games are really fun. Persona, I like the most. The only reason why I have some of these physical is because I like physical copies of things. I like to own things physically. Like, digital is really cool, but there's nothing better than to proudly display all your video games to the lucky ladies.
And then you got these two little bad boys recently, right?
Yes, I did. Imported straight from Japan. The cutest little amiibos ever. I said I wasn't going to buy any, but...
But those aren't technically amiibos because you can't scan them, or can you?
You can, actually. At the very bottom, they have the little amiibo sign. So apparently you put that in there.
See, I don't own any amiibos, so I don't even know how they work.
Don't buy any. There's no reason to.
You got a lot of Genesis, a lot of PS4, a lot of PS3. We'll talk a little bit of Super Nintendo, a lot of Genesis. We'll talk about the differences. We'll do it. All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Neighborhood Game Club, Episode 2, the grand sequel. I'm sitting here with Rodrigo Alvarado, who briefly showed you off his hot collection of Genesis games, a lot of Sega. So would you agree... I want to put this kind of like Mythbusters, about to find out. Would you argue that Sega does what Nintendo don't?
Yes.
Wow.
I would... Well, that depends. Because, I mean, well, okay. For me, the Sega Genesis has so many great games. Like, it has also like a good like sound chip to it, I would say.
See, so that's what I'm excited to talk about. So, like, me growing up as a kid, I had Super Nintendo and then N64, PlayStation, whatever. But during that 16-bit era, I was solely Super Nintendo. Now, you said you later got a Super Nintendo from friends or your teacher who effed up your Thumb Wars VHS.
Yeah.
But you grew up with Genesis, so that was your whole world.
Yes.
With me as a kid, I had like two neighbor friends I went over to the house one day and they had a Genesis, and that was my first in my life even hearing of Sega Genesis. I was maybe like 6 years old, and they had like Terminator 2 for arcade and like the Terminator 2 arcade port and a few other games. I was like, what the hell are all these videos? Because I had never heard of this, because me and all my other friends, it was all Super Nintendo. So for you growing up as a kid, what was your decision to get Genesis over Super Nintendo? Was it your choice, or was it just your parents like getting you a present?
I would say it was my parents just giving me like, because they knew I liked video games.
Yeah.
So actually, my first ever console was the Nintendo, and first ever game was Punch-Out. So they saw that I would play a lot of video games, and they said, well, almost every single Nintendo game like he has, so why not just get him, a Sega Genesis?
This is all fresh and new. Yeah.
So I got the Sega Genesis, I would say primarily because of Sonic, which is weird. Because I don't like Sonic that much. Well,
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's a whole thing, a deep, weird thing to get into, of like the whole like weird Sonic cult that's developed.
Yeah.
Like,
I was never into that stuff.
Yeah.
I was more of like, dude, I want to walk down the street and just beat people up.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I was appealing to. So, again, tackling this Genesis Super Nintendo thing is a huge web. But a good way to preface this is I read a book called Console Wars by Blake Harris, which is all about the marketing, the development of how, because originally before Super Nintendo and Genesis there was it the Mega Drive, or what was the original?
Yeah, it was the Mega Drive.
So the Master System. The Master System versus the Nintendo. And in Japan, Sega's first console did fairly well against Nintendo, but they were still ultimately crushed. And when they launched in America, no one had a Master System. Everyone just had Nintendo. So when they were getting ready to develop the Genesis or whatever, they were really wanted to focus on like capitalizing on the American market, outselling Super Nintendo. So they hired the guy who basically made Barbie a hit in the 70s. Thomas Kalinske, I believe his name was. And the book is all about, how he went from like being a huge person at Mattel, how Sega hired him, and then like he coined like Sega does with Nintendo or all these things. Like he helped really push and market the Genesis. He helped develop like Sonic to become what Sonic was we knew. Because originally the Japanese developers, when they created Sonic, he looked more like a devil, and like he had like a biker chick girlfriend with big boobs. Like he looked like a rat, like a demon, because they wanted him to be the antithesis of Mario, just a really like this evil devil.
Like cool kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what Sega was always marketing, was like, we're cool. Super Nintendo was for kids, and I think that's what my parents kind of got me Super Nintendo. Again, it was a blind choice, but I think Nintendo, and even still today, is like seen as like, oh, it's for children, it's for kids. Yeah. Even when old adults see video games, they say, oh, that's the Nintendo. They just call it a Nintendo because it's like seen as for kids. Whereas Sega, I mean, even like the term Sega, like it's like, this is fast, this is upbeat. We ain't for kids, this is for adults.
None of that shit.
And so I think, with my parents, they got me a Super Nintendo because it's like, oh, it's a kid's toy, it's appropriate. And so, this book, Console Wars, covers a span of like 7 years from, the development of Genesis, to them launching it in America, to Saturn coming out and then ultimately failing, and then how Kalinske left Sega because of all their choices. But I would strongly recommend it if you're definitely a fan of like that retro era video games, but also if you're a fan of like marketing or business. Like reading the book, it reminded me a lot of like Mad Men, just all these like just these business decisions and strategies, and like tapping in the subconscious of why people play video games and all these. So Blake Harris, Console Wars, check it out. And so even like reading that book, it was a lot of stuff I never knew about Genesis, because again, I was always blind to it, and the only like experience I had with Genesis games was for the PS3 generation. They came out with like the Sega Genesis collection, which is like 30 games, which is honestly, it's awesome. That was the first time I played Streets of Rage 2, like only a few years ago. Wow. So I haven't played much Genesis, but I played the Sonic games. Oddly enough, I didn't have Genesis, but I had a Game Gear. So I did play Sonic on that, a port of that, and I had a Dreamcast, whatever, but Genesis I missed out on. So with you having Genesis as a kid, again, you said you love Streets of Rage.
I would say Vector Man, Booger Man. That's another classic favorite.
Again, this is very adult, and it's not for kids. Booger Man is for the mature audience. The people who made Booger Man, they tried relaunching a Kickstarter a few years
You know what?
ago.
That was actually going to be my first, like... I wanted to help that. I mean, Booger Man. That's the kind of stuff we need now, because most games are just like, hey man, we don't like this. Women don't like this. You have to appeal to everybody. And for me, Booger Man was just like, oh, you fling boogers at actual people made of crap.
Well, let's talk about Streets of Rage, because again, another big divide versus Sega versus Nintendo. For me, Streets of Rage versus Final Fight. See, with me, one of my all-time favorite games is Final Fight. Are you a fan of Final Fight?
I enjoy Final Fight. I prefer Streets of Rage much more.
See, it's the same thing. It's almost like religion. Okay, so I guess we should just to our viewers who have been neglecting. It's been a very personal conversation, but I feel like that's the appeal of this. I'll explain Final Fight in my own words. So Final Fight is Capcom's like their best. I would argue like there's Street Fighter 2, but outside I think that's their best arcade game of all time. To me, it's the quintessential beat 'em up. And again, everything I'm saying, you just replace Final Fight with Streets of Rage in your case. But
I guess,
so the thing that appeals with me with Final Fight, it's the same with I guess all beat 'em ups in generals. Is you're just a dude just going down streets and alleys, beating up crusty punks and thugs, breaking barrels, eating chicken, fighting huge bosses at the end, and just steamrolling through. But again, with both Final Fight and Streets of Rage, these games take place in America, but they're from Japanese developers. Yes. And a lot of like arcade 90s games have this, like the side-scrolling era is like all the backgrounds, they're supposed to take place in New York and stuff. So you see like pizza misspelt, there's like graffiti and stuff, and like posters for bands and just things, and like it's Japan's view of what America was in the 90s. And also the idea of like the street fashion, all these thugs with like ridiculous blazers.
They look like the guys from the Terminator, the first movie.
And again, it's all the depictions in all these like early beat 'em ups are kind of modeled after movies. And with Final Fight, I was reading there's an 87 musical called Streets of Fire. Have you ever seen this?
Yes, I was actually looking that up on Wikipedia the other day.
So Streets of Fire, it flopped when it came out in America. The premise of Streets of Fire, almost the exact same as Final Fight. It's about this young like kind of thug named Cody, whose girlfriend Jessica gets kidnapped by a rival gang.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, the rival gang is headed by Willem Dafoe in all leather. So Cody and his friends go across this like corrupt, like rioting city to get this girlfriend back. And throughout the whole thing, everyone's in big, ridiculous 80s outfits. There's like musicals, there's dances, there's like fights with sledgehammers and like motorcycle gangs.
Yeah.
And it was a huge hit in Japan just because it was like kind of off kilter and weird. And a lot of the artists who made Final Fight kind of modeled their characters and the whole story. Like literally Cody and Jessica, they modeled it after that movie. So Final Fight is almost Streets of Fire, the game.
Yeah.
And Final Fight came out, was a huge hit. And then I think if I was right, with at least Streets of Rage 2, they saw the success of Final Fight and were like, oh, Sega was like, oh, we can do this better.
They can.
So the thing, though, that I will give Streets of Rage is Final Fight, the arcade version of it, is like perfect. The Super Nintendo port is really watered down. The colors, the music, sound effects is like, a lot of that's less. And that was really common of that era where there would be, the console ports would be lesser versions of the arcades versions. But Streets of Rage 2 was first and foremost a console Sega game. Yes. And it utilizes like the color palette, the sound chip.
The soundtrack is probably the best one.
So I like the Final Fight music because it's by the same composer who did Street Fighter 2. Mm-hmm. But the Streets of Rage 2 soundtrack is probably one of the best video game soundtracks of all time.
I would say so, yeah.
And it's something you can listen to without even having any association of the video game. Like that soundtrack stands on its own as just being this beautiful, funky electronic music that even still stands today. Is just immediately, the first thing I noticed when I played Streets of Rage, I think I played Streets of Rage 2 first above anything else, because I heard that was the best. You start playing it, and that song that plays at the beginning, Go Straight.
That's the one,
like,
man. Yeah.
It's like, holy... Like, I'm playing the game, and I'm just like, what the hell? Like, it's so goddamn good. And then you're playing it, and then each stage, all the music... what was your experience playing Streets of Rage as a kid?
Well, I guess it all started off when... Not experience. Well, my dad bought me the game. He's like, hey, I know you like seeing people beat each other up, because I was hugely into like Jackie Chan movies and stuff. So he said, here, I got you this game called Streets of Rage. And so I put it on, I started playing it, and obviously since I grew up with my brother, he was always there for me.
Yeah.
It was our first game that we would co-op together. So we both started playing that game.
Who did you play? Did you play as Blaze, Axel?
I played as the cool black guy. I forgot what his name is.
His name is Alex or PJ? I don't know.
Skate is his brother's name in Streets of Rage 2.
Oh, okay. So okay.
I think it's Alex.
Again,
I love the game, but I mean, it's the second one that I love the most. So he would play as Axel, obviously. Mm-hmm. You know, the cool guy. So
the guy in blue jeans, white shirt, and blonde hair. Same with Cody, and they have the same design.
Exactly the same design. So... Yeah, I mean, we started playing the game, and I fell in love, because all I really like doing is just going down the street and beating people up. I mean, obviously, I was born, Mexican. So for me, there was a lot of violence in my childhood days. So that resonated so well, seeing, just guys walking around beating people up. That's the stuff I love. It was really cool. And mostly, I mean, some of the games on Nintendo was just really simple, like Urban Champion. Just one-on-one guys would go down the street and just punch each other until they fall into a manhole. But this was just taken to like a whole nother level. I mean, you go down the street, pick up a pipe, and just whack it in some dude's face. That's what I love. I'm
gonna quickly research which came out first. Was it Final Fight or Streets of Rage? I mean, even before that, what's Rival City? What's the
River City?
River City, right? Like I feel like that. Yeah, that was the early beat 'em up, and there's all like others games, but. Like, it's funny, on Wikipedia, the beat-em-ups are classified as a genre where you have one character who fights a ton of underpowered characters, and then fight one strong character at the end of the level. And it's so deeply satisfying. Again, as a kid, especially playing it as a kid, here you are, this, like, cool dude, just crushing all these little dudes. And then, until you fight a badass guy at the very end of the level. But there's something so deeply satisfying about having a ton of characters on screen, especially if you line them up, beat them all, they've knocked back down, and just literally cleaning up the streets.
I would say the first one was like Kung Fu, also for the Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
Guys just come straight at you, and then they hug you, and you lose life, so you just punch them.
Final Fight 1 is amazing. Final Fight 2 sucks. I don't like it at all, because I think Final Fight 1 made for arcades, Final Fight 2 was made for Super Nintendo, so it was really watered down and weak. But then Final Fight 3, I think that came out like 95, like pretty late in the cycle.
Yeah.
So the pixel art, the music, there's branching paths in Final Fight 3, which makes it really cool. One thing that Final Fight 3 and like Streets of Rage have in common really well is like the way the levels are linked together. Like Streets of Rage, like at least 2, it has a very absurd like level layout, but every level stems like naturally through together.
Yeah.
Whereas like the Final Fight 1, you have just a giant map of Metro City where it's like, okay, here's the slums, and then okay, subway. You're just kind of teleporting.
Yeah.
But with Streets of Rage 2 and I think Final Fight 3, at the end of every level, you'll like punch through a wall, and then all right, now you're in this area.
Yeah.
Or like in Streets of Rage 2, you're on a baseball field, and then you go on top of a mat, and then you descend into like an alien lair.
You do, yeah. You go down the elevator, whatever that is, and then you end up in the lair of like some wrestlers and stuff wants to beat you up.
And again, and like also Final Fight is the same thing. You're finding wrestlers. What about the other like beat 'em ups of the era? Because whether there's Capcom and Sega was doing their thing. Mm-hmm. Capcom has so many beat 'em ups of that era. They have like regular beat 'em ups. Like there's Captain Commando, which is cool because there's a character where you're a baby controlling a giant mech. But then they have a lot of offbeat ones. There's an Aliens vs Predator beat 'em up.
They have the Punisher.
The Punisher.
I would say that's the best one. Punisher is my favorite Capcom beat 'em up.
The Punisher's dope because all the other Capcom beat 'em ups, for the most part, you're just punching. Mm-hmm. But then with like the Punisher and Alien vs Predator, you're picking up machine guns, rifles, like so many ridiculous items. And the Punisher is animated very well. I mean, It came out in 1993, a little bit after like Streets of Rage 2 and Final Fight. But like animation school is very comic book. Like there's pow and zip zam or whatever. But yeah, it's like when all the games are using fists, all of a sudden the Punisher has guns and there's bloods. Which I feel like it was a little ahead of its time for a side-scrolling beat-em-up. But that game's never been ported. There's a Genesis port, which isn't like as high fidelity.
Yeah.
But the Punisher arcade game came and went, and like now that whatever Marvel stuff is so huge, they should like remaster. Like just
that's what I'm hoping, because I mean, there is another Punisher game that I really like. It's for the PS2.
The original Expo, like that one's dope.
That one's really cool. But then for me, it's always the Punisher for the arcade game, because I mean, like you said, there's so much blood. You shoot a car and then it blows up, and it just shows like some skeleton with like still muscles on there intact, and it's so brutal. But that game is really fun. I mean, you have like some crazy designs, like bosses. Some guy's like upper torso, and then his whole lower half is like a tank, which is weird.
And that's a lot of the same thing in like Alien vs Predator 2. Like again, these games I only would play in like random ass arcades. My dad, we would go to Vegas a lot, and that, especially in the 90s, that's when arcades were huge. And I think Vegas had so many arcades in one area that all like the little casinos had to like kind of find deep, obscure games just to make their arcades stand out.
Yeah.
So I remember playing like at the MGM Grand arcade. This one time I went, they had like the weirdest selection of games I've never seen before. There was, I think, Batman Forever. The arcade game of that is like shitty Mortal Kombat like animations where it's like using real photographers, but it moves so fast. So there's like so many characters moving on the screen. It's like moving at a really high speed. Characters are flinging around. There's like the onomatopoeia, like bang and zap, whatever.
Yeah.
I remember playing at the arcade and like you can have 100 hit combos, and it's just like this game, like it's garbage, but for the time compared to like Pixar, it was like whoa.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the only time I ever saw that game. And then when I went to like Disney World in Florida, it was the first time I saw Alien vs Predator. And then Circus Las Vegas had the Punisher arcade game. And those are the only like isolated areas I ever saw these arcade games. And of course, whereas every other arcade games had, Street Fighter, there was like, the standard Street Fighter 2, whatever, like Time Crisis, Metal Slug.
House of the Dead.
Yeah, House of the Dead. That's like we'll derail it a little bit, but with Metal Slug, you're huge with Metal Slug, right?
That's another series that I absolutely love. Metal Slug 1, 2, X, 3, not 4 and 5, and then 6.
I got on PS2 and Wii, there's like the Metal Slug Anthology, which is like all 7, all the games, and you can play them with unlimited continues, and I think that's really cool. And yeah, I was playing through them. I played up till like 4, and yeah, I think like 4 or 5 is where I lost me. I was like, okay, whatever. Yeah. But like what, like Metal Slug 1, there's 2 and 2X, which is like an updated version. Yeah. Like those first 3 games are so amazing. Now, didn't you say you can 1 credit clear one of the games?
I can beat Metal Slug 1, 2, X, and 3 without dying.
You can do a whole run through of it
without dying.
I mean, that's
I could prove. Okay, I have some proof, but it's on the anthology collection for the PSP.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, since that has like save, like you can save it and stuff, people will say like, "Oh, you just saved the game, loaded it." But no, I'd be in those games, and there's an arcade in Mexico right near my grandma's shop where it has. I'm the first one, ROD, and I beat Metal Slug without dying.
What age were you when you were able to 1 credit clear these games?
This was when I was 11. I want to say, no, not 11, 12. It was around the time those games came out. Definitely not I was in my teenage years. This was around the time I used to visit Mexico a lot, so I would say maybe early high school.
And just to classify for anyone who doesn't know, like one credit clear means to like put a quarter in, beat the whole game without ever having to redeposit another quarter. And again, I feel like most people I'm speaking to, the people listening, watching this, are going to be people our age who know arcades. Yeah. But hypothetically, for like 12-year-olds, are people 30 years in the future watching this?
Yeah.
You know, back whatever.
There's no like infinite lives. Just say if you mess up. Too bad, man. Go find another quarter.
So how were you able to like so indispensably like be able to play this game over and over to or master it? Like you said, it wasn't your grandma's shop. It wasn't your grandma's arcade. Did you just have a lot of quarters, or like where were you able to practice so much that you were able to get so good at Metal Slug?
Luckily over there in Mexico, piracy is like everywhere.
Yeah.
So I went to my cousin's house and he had Metal Slug on his computer, and that was the first time I ever saw Metal Slug on a computer. So I asked him like, "Where'd you get this?" And he said, "Oh, some dude like sold it to me for like 10 pesos and stuff." So I would go out to the arcade to get the arcade perfect experience, you know, to play. My mom would give me quarters. Mm-hmm. And then when I wanted to go and practice more, I would just go to the computer, which would be much harder though, because I mean, it's not it's not the same, but that's where I would practice. And then next thing you know, I ended up going to the place right next to my grandma's house, and I beat Metal Slug 3 without dying. And there was
a crowd? Was there people like did like?
I got 2 free tacos. It was a taco place. So the guy was like, "Oh, that's really cool, man! Like 2 tacos, you know."
Whoa!
And there's even one. There was also an arcade in LA in Commerce. Mm-hmm. There was an arcade in there, and that's where I also beat Metal Slug 3. This was right before I went to go see the movie Sixth Sense with my dad, and I beat it there in one life. And I told my dad, I was like, "Hey, check it out! You know, I beat it." "Oh, that's cool. We got to go. Like the movie started." I was like, "Okay, sure."
See, like the only game I was able to like 1 credit clear or whatever, and this is probably not even impressive, but like, yeah, when I would go to Vegas or whatever with my dad, you know, he'd give me like a bunch of quarters while he would go like gamble or whatever. Yeah. So like, you know, my gambling would be just playing video games, and like I loved fighting games as a kid. Because, again, I had the free time, but not that many games. So I would just play Street Fighter 2 every single day, Tekken 3, all these arcade games, and I would just stay in the practice lobbies playing. And then when I go to Vegas or go to any arcade, it's like, all right, time to show what's up. And, like, and it's funny because there's local arcade called Nickel Nickel, which was like a 5-cent arcade, whatever. Yeah. And that's another place I'd go to where it's like for very little money you could play all day.
5 cents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the math. And they had a Marvel vs. Capcom 1 tournament, and I got 3rd place, and I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old at the time. Everyone else was like high school or college, and they were like they couldn't believe that this little dorky kid who could barely see over destroyed them. But yeah, so the games I'd be able to 1 credit clear are fighting games. So I'd go in, my dad would give me whatever. I'd stick in 50 cents, play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for 30 minutes, just beating all 9 stages, fighting the boss. Oh, beat the game. All right, I'm going to play a game with different characters. So I could stay forever with so little money on just like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, like a lot of the fighting games. King of Fighters. And then when I would get to like the boss or like the really high AI, I would like die, let myself lose, and then start fresh because then I could just travel up. Because like, you know, you don't want to get to a game like I feel like Metal Slug beat 'em ups, especially like bosses which are specifically designed to drain quarters.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Especially for the Metal Slug games, those are
and it's cheap. like screw that. I think so. Going back to beat 'em ups, Konami's beat 'em ups are fun because they're really silly. And I think nearly all of them are based on pre-existing properties. So when I say like Konami beat 'em ups, I'm talking like the Simpsons arcade game, X-Men arcade game,
Teenage Mutant
Ninja Turtles. Those are like the 3 that stick out. The boss designs of those games are terrible because it's just like they're running like I feel like there's no strategy.
No, like the one that stands out to me the most would be for the Simpsons. Mm-hmm. It's the big balloon thing of like Krusty. So you attack it once or twice, it smacks you, and then it jumps around and it leaves, and dude, I don't like Konami beat 'em ups.
Yeah, I like but playing them at home, like all 3 of those games were released on Xbox Live Arcade. Yeah, they've since like lost the licenses. You can't get them anymore. And this is something I'll revisit talking about. Like, that's why I don't collect digital games. Yeah, is because it's like you're screwed because you don't own it. You just own the license.
PT.
Yeah, exactly. But like with Simpsons arcade game, that beat 'em up is so funny. Again, talking about like Streets of Rage, Final Fight. This is America as depicted by Japanese. The Simpsons arcade game was made as season 2 was still like being aired. Yeah. So like there's Dr. Monroe, where Dr. Monroe is like a main character in the game. You know, like these like one-off stories, but it's because the staff making the Simpsons game only had like 20 episodes to like base their whole beat 'em up. And so there's a lot of characters that you fight are based on Matt Groening's Life is Hell. So you fight the bunnies with like the ears, and it's just like, oh, this is a simple same art style, so let's use it.
Don't you fight the moon also?
Yeah, again, there's an episode, there's a level in the Simpsons arcade game that's just like, I feel like it just goes full Japanese where it's a dream. It's like they ran out of material to base their game off of. So in the Simpsons arcade game, there's kind of like a dream level where you're starting in Krusty Land and then you like trip out or something. And then you go up fighting clouds, and then you go to Japan, you fight samurai, which, again, Simpsons wouldn't go to Japan until, like, season 10, you know, like, with the soap episode or whatever, but it's like, this comes out of nowhere, and it's just like, they're using Simpsons characters loosely, it's loosely tied to it, and then same with the X-Men, that game is awesome, because the arcade cabinet for X-Men, I remember playing this at Chuck E. Cheese, I think it had 8 like joysticks or whatever. It was like at least 6, and that was such a fun community experience of like just walking up with like all these other dudes. Oh, let's all play, you know, jumping in and out. And again, because the boss has 8 quarters, I feel like that's when most people would leave. You know?
Oh yeah. The thing is also with Konami games, they were mostly built for like cooperative games.
Yeah.
So a lot of people. So you would see the Punisher has 1 and 2 characters. Meanwhile, the Simpsons, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, X-Men all have like 4 and then more. So yeah. They were always into the, hey, everybody can play, but
we'll make the games hard and cheap as hell. One thing that's so funny with Konami games, talking again back to video game music, is the soundtracks for Konami games all utilize like orchestral hits way too much. Where it's like the boom, 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 boom. There's a song called Sewer Surfing for like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, I think, and it's like the orchestral hit is every single drum beat. And all the Konami games, like it's so funny to listen to, but yeah, the Konami soundtracks are like ridiculous. All right, so that's that era of beat 'em ups, the like arcade, the early Street Fighter. So then moving on to like PlayStation and N64.
All right.
So a lot of beat 'em ups originally come from like the idea of like arcade games where it's the idea is like let's eat your quarters. It's a fun, quick game you play for 30 minutes. But then by the time home consoles got to PlayStation, games were less about like arcade experiences, you know, where it's like one and done or like quick experience, and they were more about big worlds. Like that's why there was a lot of like
you had stories.
And even stuff like Crash Bandicoot, whereas like old platformers were like side scrolling, you die, you start over. Whereas like all these other platformers coming out, which are these open worlds, these big like lots of collectibles. They wanted these games to be deeper, longer experiences.
Yeah.
And so now beat 'em ups kind of lost their way, where it was like, well, beat 'em ups again was very 2D. In the late 90s, stuff was moving on towards like, the more 3D, and the beat 'em ups didn't really transition too well to the 3D area.
Yeah.
Although there were a few, but for PlayStation, like the only beat 'em up that comes to mind is, did you ever play Fighting Force?
I did play Fighting Force. That one. Yeah, that one really does come to mind. I remember just really enjoying that game a lot.
Yeah, as a kid, like this is cool. Again, I think it had guns, but it was cool because like you could go through malls. Yeah. And like. Again, as a kid, the most I experienced the world was like video games and movies. Like I never really left my house, so it's like, a mall. Let's take a look in the mall. You know, like I mean, I still went places. I'm not a neglected child. Nothing like that.
You're here.
But I was very obsessed with just exploring every nook and cranny in video games. So when there was 3D spaces, it was like, oh, look at this, a food court. Like I just like seeing how things were rendered and modeled through video games. And so Fighting Force, you go through like New York streets, whatever. Like shopping malls,
hotels.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, I think going back to the whole thing about open worlds, the very first level of Freedom Force, if you make a left, there's that one car, the black car that's there, you beat it up, dude, there's a rocket launcher in the back.
Damn.
That's the stuff that's like, I think that's what started me on that whole, like, I need to find secrets in games.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff I love. I mean, unfortunately now, if you want to do that kind of thing, it's all tied to like trophies. Yeah, which is like, and it gives away. Everyone knows about stuff. But yeah, that was the fun thing about discovering stuff early on in video games. And that's like a whole other huge topic to get into. But back on fighting games, so there's Fighting Force, not that great, whatever. And then they made a sequel, which because they kind of saw like Metal Gear and stuff blow up, Fighting Force 2 wasn't even like a beating 'em up. It was more it was like an adventure, like an action game where you just go around. But Dreamcast, Sega, they like picked up the pace. There's even though for Saturn arcade era, Die Hard Arcade. That's one of my favorites. Yeah,
so originally Die Hard Arcade, whatever, in Japan was Dynamite Deca?
Yeah,
Dynamite Cop.
Yeah.
But they still modeled it off. They think they straight up modeled it after. I can't remember. So I mean, Wikipedia. You can find out. There's two ways. One in Japan, I think it was, they made Dynamite Deca, either using their own characters or whatever. But then when they wanted to port it over to the USA, they were like, "Oh, this looks like Die Hard. Let's just make it Die Hard and get the license for it." And I think that's what it was. Or the other way is they straight up ripped off Die Hard, and then when they wanted to port Dynamite Deca, they're like, "Oh, hey, we have to get the rights to this." Either way.
That explains the final boss of the game. I mean, it's an old guy.
Yeah.
Don't see in the movie,
so then that's what it was. I think it was just straight up its own unique property, and then they noticed the similarities, and they thought, "Oh, hey, in order to boost sales, let's just make it Die Hard." So that's why Bruce Willis is teamed up with like a chick or whatever. It's like whatever. But that game rules because it kept like the zaniness of like just like early beat 'em up games where it's like you're picking up weapons, you can pick up trash, basically every item in like the Die Hard game. You can pick up items, whack people. Yeah. It's very fun while still being like very kind of linear in its progression. Mm-hmm. Like you enter a room, here's all these items, you're running around. That game is great. Die Hard Trilogy for PlayStation. You ever play this game?
I own that game.
As a kid, again, being the person who loved exploring stuff in like games, I played the hell out of Die Hard Trilogy Arcade. Die Hard Trilogy, God, I want to get that now. Die Hard Trilogy is 3 games, again, so loosely based on the actual thing, but it's, so the Die Hard 1 is like, God, I'd almost describe it as like a beat 'em up. Like it's a shoot 'em up, but it's so very light and arcadey. We're just running around building, shooting people. It's almost like Smash TV, where it's so just like, it's not very well designed or anything.
I would say it's kind of like a top-down-ish kind of isometric view where you're just playing as John McClane and you're running around with one arm out and you're shooting like everything with one arm. And you find like little boxes, you save hostages, and then at the end of the level you have to get to the elevator. Yeah. And then you just go up to the next one.
I played the hell out of that game, and again, part of it was like with cheat codes made the game fun.
Yeah.
There was a cheat you could do called like Underview or whatever, where in order to shoot, John McClane would have to like shoot under, like he'd have to put his head beneath his legs and shoot. There's another cheat called like Floating to Heaven, where you shoot someone and they would float up.
I remember that one.
Just all these weird ass polygon like tricks. So I played the hell out of that game, but that was fun. But that game, like if you look at it today, it's so shitty. But as a kid, I played the hell of it. Die Hard, the second one was a like, you know, a shooter, like
Virtual Cop.
Whatever.
Where it zooms in on an enemy.
Yeah, and
you have time, and then you shoot.
But because like Die Hard Trilogy wasn't built in mind to like use the thing, you had to use a controller to like navigate the thing, and it wasn't fun. And Die Hard 2 is a shitty movie, so Die Hard 3 was probably the funniest game I ever played as a kid because it was probably the worst graphics for a video game. It was ambitious. The idea was Die Hard 3, you're driving around, running from place to place to defuse bombs, and you're running around the streets of like Harlem and stuff, and like New York City. So it's this just big open area we can drive around, but it has like the crappiest graphics.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that made me laugh so hard is you could run over people and there'd be so much blood and John McClane would be like, hey, sorry, I'm the cop, that's what happens. Like, here, and as a kid I would play this just like laughing maniacally, running over people and like be screaming, but because the graphics are so bad, it was hysterical.
It doesn't register to you. Like, those are actually like real people.
No, whereas like if you play Grand Theft Auto 5 on PS4 in the first person view, if you run over people, I don't like it. It's like too realistic.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Whereas Die Hard Trilogy is like hysterically bad in the graphics, and
the way you defuse bombs in that game is you hit them with your car. They blow up. You do a U-turn and then you go on to the next one.
Yeah, they still blow up. But if you don't get there, you blow up, and all the cars and people in the area would die and they'd scream. Because the graphics are so bad, it's funny. Yeah. There's a YouTube video called Grandpa Forgot His Car Keys. Have you seen this?
I've seen that one.
And that reminds me of this shitty graphics, but it's hysterical. And yeah, so Die Hard Trilogy was that. Anyways, pulling back. So the sequel to Die Hard, the beat 'em up, is a game called, I think in Japan it's Dynamite Deca 2. In America it's Dynamite Cop, released for Dreamcast. Did you ever play Dynamite Cop?
I did not know.
I recently just bought a copy of it like a year ago, for Dreamcast. That game is amazing. It's so this one they weren't trying to make it Die Hard at all. This is straight up like, all right, let's just make the craziest beat 'em up. Dynamite Cop for I'll just call it Dynamite Deca 2.
Yeah.
The premise is you're like a SWAT team. The same old white guy from Die Hard 1 is back, but he's a cyborg because you killed him off the first time. Like he's a robot arm or something. He's on a cruise ship. He's stolen the president's daughter. You've got to rescue her. So the SWAT team descends on a cruise ship. So you fight through a whole cruise ship. It's like a casino cruise ship. You go through like the kitchen. In the kitchen, you fight a chef who's like half a crab or something like that.
What?
Like all the enemies are. It starts off normal and then it gets progressively absurd. The Kingpin takes the president's daughter and all his like terrorist friends, and they sail away to this giant skull island. And then all of a sudden, you're fighting like pirates and skeletons and like.
Now I really want to play
It's
really
dope. I mean, you should come over and play it. We'll play it.
Yeah.
And then also on Dreamcast, there's Zombie Revenge. You ever play that?
Is that the one where
It's
side-scrolling beat 'em up?
It's not. Yeah, it's 3-dimensional, but yeah, where it's the same thing like Dynamite Deca, wherever, where it's like a 3D space but still kind of linear. You have guns, the option to shoot, and then it's a beat 'em up, but you're fighting zombies. So it's a beat 'em up with zombies, and you can shoot them. Zombie Revenge is dope. I played that a ton in arcades and also on Dreamcast. That game needs to be ported somewhere, but it's not.
Emulate it.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like you can emulate like old. I don't know. Again, this ties back to digital versus physical collecting. When stuff is emulated, I think for a one-off experience, let me try this out.
Yeah.
Okay. But when stuff is emulated, it's so disposable. You kind of don't respect, or you kind of don't respect or appreciate it. Because like you download a game, if you don't like it, whatever. But if you paid for something, or if it's then it's like you appreciate it. Like, oh, I'm gonna take this seriously. I don't know. That's how I factor it in my mind. It's like because I get like 10 free PlayStation Plus games a month, and it's like I'll download them, but am I gonna play them? Probably not. But if I paid for this video game, it's like I'm gonna play it. So that's kind of how I see emulation. I mean, ultimately, I think it's cool because it makes it affordable that anyone. And it's a way of archiving history. Anyone can play this old game. But yeah, like with emulating, I mean, again, also with Dreamcast, you can burn games, but there's something about it where you just don't respect it if you just pirate it. All right, so getting into the next era, PS2. So for me, my favorite, this is also like probably my favorite co-op game of all time, is Dynasty Warriors. That series I love. Yeah, it sounds weird.
Okay.
There's even its own subgenre of beat 'em ups. They're called Musou games.
Yes.
Because in Japan it's called Musou Warriors or whatever. Trust me, I'm an expert. So there's like the core series Dynasty Warriors, and then there's Samurai Heroes. There's crossover games, Warriors Orochi. They've done Warriors Legends of Troy, where you're like...
The Gundam ones?
There's Gundam, there's One Piece, there's Fist of the North Star. I haven't played them all. There's not enough time in my life to play them all as much as I would love to. So I gotta be kind of specific about what I get. There's also The Legend of Zelda, Hyrule Warriors. There's Dragon Quest, whatever.
Yeah.
I love these games. And again, they're very... Like, they sell very well in Japan. In here, they're not in America, they're not huge, but they still sell enough. And again, a lot of them are kind of like recycled and they copy, whatever. But the reason I love Dynasty Warrior games, it's not like for the story. If you want the story of the Dynasty Warriors, I mean, it's just the 3 kingdoms Chinese history. You can watch John Woo's Red Cliff, which is, I think, one of John Woo's best movies. It's like 4 hours, this giant war epic. It's dope. It's Dynasty Warriors, the movie. Anyways.
Hard boiled. Hard boiled.
I would even say I like the killer more. Whatever. That's another day.
That's another
day. Point is, Dynasty Warriors I love so much because you are one soldier fighting thousands in a single level. Whereas like Final Fight, at most on screen, will have 6 players. With Dynasty Warriors, it's one person against like 200 on screen. So in like you can go up to like a 500 hit combo or whatever. You're just destroying enemies and fighting strong generals. You're constantly leveling up. You're constantly finding new weapons. There's this constant like reward system where you're always getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and then you can push the difficulty higher and higher. So you're constantly being challenged. It's addictive. I think the reason I love beat 'em up games, more specifically Dynasty Warriors, is I have like light OCD, and decluttering, which is the idea of like cleaning or like making things neat, it scratches as part of my brain. And with Dynasty Warriors, you're one little blue dude, and on the map is it's just fully red. And you just start chipping away at it, and you can see the map getting cleaner and cleaner. Yeah. And the constant progression, the reward system, like, oh, you're 1 strength higher, you can level up your stats. Like it's all it's like again, it's like all these like numbers cleaning up the map, getting stronger. This constancy to progression. And that's the other thing too. I'm very like obsessed with like death and like the idea of like life is limited. Oh wow. So I always feel like I have to be doing something productive. And again, ultimately with Dynasty Warriors, it's not very productive, or whatever. But like, every time you kill a general, you get like 1 stat higher. So it's like you're constantly leveling up, getting stronger and stronger and stronger. You're cleaning up the map, you're decluttering, and it's like, it's soothing for me. I love that feeling.
If you like that stuff, don't play Luigi's Mansion.
Why?
You will never clean up the dust in the game.
Oh, no.
I've tried for hours. It doesn't work.
And so if you want to play Dynasty Warriors, I mean, for me, I loved like Dynasty Warriors 3 and 4, but that's like 10 years old. Yeah. I think if you like Zelda, the like Hyrule Warriors is amazing. They released it on PS3 and PS4. It's called Warriors Orochi 3. And I describe it as like the Marvel versus Capcom of Warriors games, where it's all the characters, all the stages, with the exception of like the licensed anime properties. Yeah. But it's Samurai Warriors, it's it's Samurai Warriors, Dynasty Warriors, it's everything all in one. It's like 90 characters.
Jesus.
That is like my favorite Warriors game, and to the point where like I think I leveled up almost every character to max stats, and like I was like that obsessive with it.
That's bad for you, man.
No, it was very. I was like, this was like 2-3 years ago when I played it. I was like depressed, and so I was like going through like a tough month, and like I remember just getting this game, and like that's all I did for a week. I feel like I didn't eat much. I would wake up, exercise for like an hour. I would listen to like a self-help book, not like I would just listen to audiobooks, and
a book about like stopping that nonsense.
No, self-help, how to get unaddicted to shitty beat 'em ups. No, I would like listen to an audiobook, come home, play Dynasty Warriors for like 8 hours straight. Mm-hmm. I was listening to audiobooks or watching documentaries, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I did it for like a week straight, the same routine, and then like I ultimately I lost like a lot of weight in this period just because I was doing nothing but exercise and Dynasty Warriors and listening to audiobooks. Like,
did you ever play on a treadmill?
No, but although now when I exercise, I will watch like Dragon Ball, or I will watch stuff while exercising. But no, back then I was just saying. But I think it's because I wasn't eating as much. I was literally so addicted to Warriors Orochi 3 that I wouldn't eat as much, or if I did, I'd eat real fast. Yeah. I don't know. I recommend that Warriors Orochi 3 or Hyrule Warriors. They're coming out with Dragon Quest Warriors soon, or Dragon Quest Heroes. That looks dope. But yeah, I love those games so much. I think co-op games are fun just because it's you and a buddy destroying thousands of players at once. Also, the voice acting for those games are like Dynasty Warriors 3 and 4. Now I don't even think they localize them. They don't bother. But originally every game had to be dubbed, otherwise like publishers wouldn't release in the US. Dynasty Warriors 3 and 4, it's like, again, these are all Chinese characters, right? But like,
do they have American voices?
Yes, and it's like, Cow, you must come over to Yingsheng province to defeat Lord Shushu. And it's like these super white voices, like just yelling out Chinese emperor names. Like, it's, I mean, I just spent the last 5 minutes saying, oh, Musou Warriors, Orochi. I mean, that's probably as bad and laughable as it is. But yeah, I just, they're like B-level games, but I love them. So while that was going on in the PS2 era, Clover, and was like now Platinum, they released in that span of time Beautiful Joe and God Hand.
God Hand is one of my favorite games. The reason why I love it so much is, like you said, it's hard. It's a hard game.
It's fucking
and tough. It's, to me, that's a beat 'em up. Like the games you're talking about, like the Warriors ones.
That's more hack and
yeah. So I consider those like hack and slash.
Yeah.
Anything where you use, like if your sword or a staff or any weapon is your primary weapon, that to me is not a beat 'em up. Like beating up thousands of troops, as cool as that, like, I know you like that stuff. For me, I like just one-on-one, me against like maybe 3 guys or something, and I beat them up, and they beat the shit out of me because I'm just a normal guy, and I like games where I'm underpowered and I fight someone who's stronger than me. Like, that's the kind of stuff I like. So God Hand is definitely one of those games where you run towards people and you have to be so careful on like how you approach them.
Yeah, you can't.
If not, you'll get your ass.
See, like, again, that's probably why you don't like the Dynasty Warriors games. Those games are easy. They're they're mindless. They're easy. If you play on the max difficulty level, whatever. But even like the fact that you're constantly leveling up, you can even just grind and outpace it. God Hand, like, I mean, it wasn't impossible. Like, yeah, I played through it, but like the first time playing it, I thought I approached it from a Warriors standpoint, like, I'm gonna run around. Immediately died, and it's like, oh fuck, this is tough. And the soundtrack for that game is awesome.
It's really
like
good.
The main theme of it is this very Ennio Morricone like Western surf guitar theme. But then like in God Hand, there's this boss where it's like mini chibi Power Rangers or whatever. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know.
And like they have their own theme. This like very like Super Sentai like it's.
It's like you're fighting Beautiful Joe.
Yeah, that's what it is. And I think it's so funny with God Hand is because Shinji Mikami who made that, right? He made that after Resident Evil 4, like, you know, which is masterpiece. I think God Hand was his way of like, all right, let's go back to our roots. Let's make a really like light, fun, quintessential video game.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about it. Like, unfortunately, people saw it as like, well, this game is really bad. We don't like it, like IGN, that kind of shit. But
yeah, because they.
That's the game. Like he put his heart into.
Yeah.
Like you read the interviews, just like I put everything I could into this game. People didn't like it, so that's why I'm making The Evil Within. Like I like The Evil Within, but I just wish more video games now would let creators put their heart into it.
Yeah, and let them be video games, because now everything has to be like a AAA production. Like everything has this. The Ubisoft design philosophy, where every game now has to be a huge open world with like 1,000 collectibles, where it's like just I hate it so. I hate Ubisoft's design philosophy, and that's like what we'll talk about with Dying Light. But like, yeah, God Hand again. I feel like with Clover Studios and Platinum Games, whatever, they make perfect video games. They're still like Bayonetta 2, I feel like was like one of the last games I played recently where after I beat it, it was like, it wasn't that long a game, maybe 9 hours, but I beat Bayonetta 2 and was like, that was so fun and fast, and like the story and all the cutscenes did you beat Bayonetta 2 yet?
I beat it yesterday actually.
And like
at night.
Just the opening cutscene where Bayonetta's shopping, is the name Bayonetta? Whatever. If her name is Bayonetta or not, whatever. But the chick is shopping in like Hollywood, and then like a jet airplane comes storming down, and she dodges the jet airplane, jumps on top of it, is fighting these demons. Like, it's such a big, loud game that's not dumb. Like, it's not like dumb. It's just like these dudes making games because they were inspired as a kid to make big, loud games, and it's so fun. It's confident. Mm-hmm. It's the combat is satisfying, and like I feel like Platinum. I mean, Clover dissolved and is now Platinum basically, but yeah, Platinum is like one of these studios that is still making video game, it's so dumb to even classify, but like that is what they rule. They're so fun. Whereas I feel like everything else is like that like fucking Western Ubisoft.
I don't like Ubisoft games. I agree with you with the whole Platinum thing, because I mean they made Metal Gear Rising, which is really just I love that game. It's so satisfying,
crunchy and satisfying.
The first Bayonetta game,
that's dope.
Bayonetta 2, even the Wonderful 101, which I'm playing through right now. That's another one of my favorite games. Like, I know people give it a lot of shit, but it's fun. Like that's a video game. That's what I love.
And then so I think that's interesting. You make the distinction between beat 'em up and then hack and slash, because now there's like Devil May Cry and like God of War, and there's a string of games like those are like hack and slash where it's less beat 'em up and they're more kind of action adventure. But those games are still satisfying. Like I just finally played God of War series like 2 years ago or whatever. Mm-hmm. I bought the HD trilogy, and like that was really fun. I enjoyed it just because like. Again, it's video gaming, and it's big and loud and ridiculous.
People hate it though. I honestly don't understand the hate. Like I like Greek mythology, and I like just going around like ripping fucking.
Yeah, I mean it's very like hyper like masculine or whatever, but it's like that's what it is. And again, it's great. It's that air. It's just that's that world. That's what he's inviting you to. But I think it's cool. I dig it. There is been, thankfully because of like indie game development, there is kind of now a throwback to like beat 'em ups, at least in the past few years. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was like Scott Pilgrim the game, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And again, art done by Paul Robertson, who like does amazing pixel art. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was a very fun co-op game. Castle Crashers was like I had so much fun with that game. Did you dig Castle Crashers?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Scott Pilgrim game, I kind of liked it a little bit.
Yeah. I think all the artistic assets of the game, like pixel art was Paul Robertson, and then like Mariel Kinoko like helped out on it. Mm-hmm. The music was done by Anamanaguchi. The actual gameplay, like it's funny because when I saw Scott Pilgrim the movie, I liked it a lot, but then like it stuck in the like nerd like mythology of just being like, oh, that's the epic game of epic, like so like the whole like Scott Pilgrim, that whole property became a little tired. And it sucks because like the actual thing itself is cool, but like. Because people talked about it so much and clung to it, it was just like, all right, whatever. But I think the game itself is fun. But Castle Crashers I like even better. Double Dragon Neon. Did you play Double Dragon Neon?
I did play Double Dragon.
Oh, and again, even talking about the original beat 'em up, like Double Dragon. But again, that was Nintendo. I never really played it. Double Dragon Neon I thought was such a fun like throwback to it. Mm. The soundtrack is dope. Jake Kaufman did the soundtrack.
Yeah, I've listened to some of the stuff. They're really good.
There's the like second stage song. Is this like genuine like really dope 80s pop anthem.
Yeah.
It's so groovy and fun. Like the whole soundtrack for Double Dragon Neon's great. But yeah, that was a game. It was funny. So originally I played all the Dynasty Warriors with my friend Mike, and like he went off to he went to a different high school and different college than me, so I never saw him again. He was in town for like Christmas break, like when we were still in college, like 3 years ago, whatever. And then we hung out once. I was like, oh, we should hang out and play video games sometime. All right. So then that weekend, wherever he come and hung out, and like I bought Double Dragon Neon, and it was such a like throwback of like him and I sat down, we played through the entire game in one sitting, just this co-op game, and like we beat it in like 5 hours, and like I had a great time with it. Very great, it's just a great beat 'em up that's a throwback to it.
it's a good modern one too.
Yeah.
'Cause they have most of these like indie games where they want to be beat 'em ups.
Yeah.
But they don't get it right. Like,
Yeah.
There's some where if you're like I guess you're on the same plane as someone and like you're punching them, but your punches don't register because I guess they're not good at programming.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I think Double Dragon Neon kind of has that stuff going on, but it's better than the rest though. I mean, it's definitely it's a good beat 'em up.
And then one other throwback is Vanilla Games or Vanilla Software's Dragon's Crown.
Yes, I
thought that was really cool.
That's a beautiful game.
And that's another thing too. People kind of complain like, "Oh, this game's too hard," or whatever. And like the game's not impossible, or whatever. But the art for that game is gorgeous.
It is.
It's so everything is like
it's just so
like
sad
watercolors.
it's so sad that people hate it.
Yeah, I thought Dragon's Crown's dope, but now they're like remastering Odin Sphere and like I'm sure they'll make a new game. But yeah, I thought Dragon's Crown was really cool.
I really love that game. I got it for the PS3 and then I got it for Vita again because I just wanted to play that game on the go. It was just really fun.
All right, God, we've already. I like that we spent almost the entire episode focusing on beat 'em ups. But part of the reason that I wanted to have you on is because we follow each other on Twitter or whatever, and like Rod is someone who we kind of share the same philosophy or whatever, where it's like we like video games.
I do.
That's like really like we love and enjoy video games, and I feel like with the internet there's such a deep rooted cynicism revolving like video games and even like a lot of things in nerd culture. People are so quick to like shit on something, attack something, compare this to this, and say like, oh, this sucks, but this is great.
Yeah.
But with us, it's like we kind of play everything. We don't like necessarily take. It's just like we like playing stuff and like, yeah. I feel we don't have to put any filters or anything. And so like, I like when I follow like Ron on Twitter will just say like, oh, I play this game, it's dope. Like that. Like that's it. There's none of this like attacking or shit posting.
I have to give, for me, if there's a game that's coming out, I don't judge it until I play it.
Yeah, totally.
That's the thing. And I also don't stop at the first level of God Hand. And then just say, hey, this game is shit, I'm giving it a 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
Because there's other games that are not equally as worse. I would say there's some games that are worse, but deserve that rating, whereas God Hand is like, obviously this game is much better than the rest.
And there's, I think God Hand was a game, no, there's some games where like, I'll try playing the first time, oh, this is too hard, and then but I won't like shun it off, I'll come back to it. Dark Souls was a game, first time I played it, it was like, oh, this is too hard, I don't know if this is right, I don't like it. But then I came back like 2 years later, I'm gonna try this again, and then I was like a little older, I played, I felt like I was better at video games than me, and then I took it seriously, and then it's like, okay, great. And I think that's, it's so funny with like God Hand, came out, IGN like destroyed it. It's like, that's the biggest problem I think with video game journalism is I think the issue with video game journalism is everything has to be first reactions.
Yes.
And it's constant first reactions. No one is ever going back. There's no retrospectives. People aren't viewing video games so much as art in the sense of like, how is this going to hold up 5 years from now? What does it say about our culture? It's none of that. It's, hey, we played this game. Here's the first 5 minutes of it. Isn't this cool? By the time that game is out, there's a new game they're already covering. Like everything has to be first reactions, and no one ever does reviews where it's like, oh, I played this for... No one ever does, like, updated reviews or anything where they come back to and look at it. And that's, again, what's so fun about playing older games is I will buy a game long after it's been out of, like, the realm of, like, video game pop culture. I'll finally play this and be like, oh, I like with God of War. I knew that was big when it came out, whatever. I didn't play it until 4 or 5 years later. Played the games and like, oh, that was cool. I liked it. Like, everything has to be so first and out. Whereas, like, I feel like you and I, we like playing... We buy everything, so it's like, we'll pick up a game, like you said, you're just now getting into Wii and Wii U games. Yeah. You're seeing this now, and like again, it's removed from this social aspect of it, and you're just enjoying it.
And it's not even the fact also that, I mean, I just got a Wii U recently, but it wasn't because back then I disliked it. Yeah. For me, it was always like, oh man, like I should get a Wii or I should get a Wii U. It was never like, I'm not gonna fucking get that. Yeah. I'm not gonna get a Wii U because it sucks or something. It's just I've always wanted it. I never had the time to get it. Now that I have it, it's like, oh man, I should go back and revisit all these games that I really like. And even, I mean, it's the same case with The Wonderful 101. Like, I heard people just talking shit about that game. Yeah. I'm playing it, and I'm having, like, the best time of my life. It's such a fun game.
That and Okami are, like, the 2 games from Okami and Platinum I haven't played yet. I both, because I hear they're kind of, like, 20 to 30. They're a little bit longer. Yeah. But, I mean, that's not, I'll still, it's like, that's not an issue. I'll just play it when I have time for it. Yeah. And yeah, that's the thing too with like Bayonetta 2 and Wonderful 101 is like the Wii U install base is pretty small compared to PS4, and so Bayonetta 2 is honestly like I think that's the best game I played on Wii U. So few people have played it, and like it's like forgotten. Yeah. Did you play Bayonetta 2 with the Pro controller?
I did. Yeah.
That's the thing. I don't like Wii U's gamepad. I mean, I think it's cool in some, like with Splatoon, that works. That's an awesome use of it. But like for some games, like using the Pro Controller works. And Bayonetta 2 is the game I was so happy to play with the Pro Controller.
Yeah, I mean it was made for that kind of controller. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want. You can look at stuff on your screen, while you're just seeing the TV screen. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing in that game that's like inventory management, map, or anything.
Yeah, that's why I'm happy. Like the game isn't. There's some games that come out that forces you to use the big gamepad, and it's like, oh, I'm kind of hesitant. But again, I'm open minded. Mm-hmm. So as I was saying, Rod, you are very like you and I were both optimistic, enthusiastic, willing to try new things. We don't shit on things. That's what makes me very surprised that you are a avid reader and follower of 4chan's V. That's your like go-to message. Okay, so this is what again I wanted, and again this could be a whole other episode of discussion. So again, we don't follow like video game journalism like news sites like Kotaku, Polygon, all that shit. Is like, it's.
I follow Polygon.
Really?
I only follow them to see their terrible articles.
Oh right, that's the thing. And I say that I follow Kotaku because like half the stuff they post is like, all right, cool, whatever. But so much of it is all trying to like target this like. That's like nerd culture where it's like, oh, let's talk about Mad Max for 2 years straight. Let's talk about Hunger Games. Let's talk about Game of Thrones. And it's like, this has nothing to do with video games. Just want to talk about video games. Like I went on, I went on Polygon today. It's like another article of like kids playing with lightsabers because of Star Wars. And it's like
that's the kind of, especially when big stuff comes out like Mad Max.
Yeah, and it's
how many articles do I have to read about like, hey, look at this Mad Max inspired. I don't.
Yeah, today on Kotaku, I think it was like, hey, this guy built a 30-foot ship out of Legos. It's like,
thanks a lot.
All right, it's just pinning towards like man children. I like. Yeah. So again, I don't, and that's the thing that sucks, and that's kind of why I'm doing this show. Is there isn't really a mature video game journalism. I feel. I mean, there are some sites. I think like. Is it called Game of Satura or whatever? Like, there's these sites.
I know.
Yeah, there's sites that are trying to do it, and like they're not as huge, but that's great. And I'm sure people will comment. Like, yeah, literally comment. Like, what are sites that you follow for like video game news, whatever? Mm-hmm. For me, honestly, the only thing I really use the consistent is NeoGAF. Like, I like NeoGAF because it just seems to be like adult, like just chill. I mean, there's a lot of hardcore nerds, but it just seems like a mature, mellow place where people are posting stuff like. A lot of news breaks through NeoGAF first. There's a lot of insiders on it, but I like reading NeoGAF and posting on it just because it's like mostly just adults talking about video games, and it's refreshing. It's calm. It's not like hateful or anything. So I like NeoGAF. So you use V for 4chan, right? Explain
Okay, the reason why I use 4chan, mm-hmm. or I go on 4chan, I go on the video game board, is because they're more direct about the stuff they hate. So for me, I mean, I see these websites like Polygon and NeoGAF. I'm sorry, hating on NeoGAF. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I go to those websites and all I see is either them pandering to like admins and stuff. So they have to be like, hey, did you guys see that Sony stuff? Boy, I really love Sony. Anyone else is wrong. And then you have like admins banning people for being sarcastic. And then on 4chan, it's like, hey, this game fucking sucks. And then you have the next guy, some random anonymous guy, just saying, hey, actually, I like this game. And then there's pornography and stuff. But when they get down to like the real like details about like video games, because they're not restricted by admins,
it's completely filtered. There's no
filter. There's no filter on it, and that's what I like. And obviously, they hate good games. They hate bad games, and so there's always. It could also change my mind too, because if someone hates like this game, say, "Oh, did you guys play this game? This game fucking sucks." To me, it'd be like, "Oh, I love that game. Let me read why it fucking sucks from this guy who's being so honest, so sincere."
Yeah, I mean, I do like. Again, I like both. I love I love all kinds of analysis. Like I like seeing things from different perspectives, and I like people who are opinionated and have likes and dislikes, whatever.
Yeah.
I like the 4chan. It's just like, yeah, because it is. There's no filters. It just tends to lean negative. But like, if someone does come out with like, "Hey, I like this," do people respect it, or is it immediately like, "Hey, you're a faggot"? I feel like that's what most of 4chan is.
It is, but it's also. It depends during what time of day it is also, because the kids are always out during the daytime.
Yeah.
At night, you're going to have threads of like, hey, have you guys ever played this game? And then it would be people talking about, oh yeah, I used to really love this game. And like, you have like some topics about like the hottest video game girl or whatever. Then you have like spoilers.
Well, I mean, I lean towards more of that. I think that's...
I like that stuff.
No, there was a topic on NeoGAF of like... Yeah, I think that occasionally that kind of stuff will be on NeoGAF too. Like, who's the hottest video game girl? Most of the comments will be like, "Are you kidding?" But then, I do think you're right. Is like most of NeoGAF does kind of thwart off sarcasm, and like I think in a very soft way. That's I will be sarcastic on NeoGAF, but yeah, you kind of do. it does. Whereas 4chan leans more towards negative. NeoGAF leans more towards optimism. But you're right, where it can be a lot of blind positivity, whereas 4chan can be a lot of blind negativity.
Yes.
For a long time, I was on like the Something Awful video game forums. I think that's a kind of good middle ground of like, sarcastic negativity and sarcastic positivity.
You just have to pay to post though.
Yeah, that's true. But what I think when I use Something Awful's forums, I found like an amazing World of Warcraft guild. Like their community stuff is really helpful. NeoGAF is helpful too. But yeah, I think Something Awful might be a good positive middle ground. I like NeoGAF a lot. The same thing 4chan is like, there's just so many topics on a million things.
Yeah.
Whereas like Something Awful is kind of there's two forms in Something Awful. There's like the main one where it's like it has to be a big topic about a big event or else. Whereas a small topic will just be a really like like there's a shitpost forum that's just like really crappy post and it's like, I wish I can be sincere about a simple thing, but it's all sarcasm. But honestly, the best place I get like video game news, analysis, opinions is just honestly talking with my friends. Because that's what it is. There is no filters. I mean, there's the general social constructs, whatever. But I mean, it's just, hey, we're talking and we can have that honest discussion. We can read facial cues so we're not being sarcastic or anything like that. And so that's why, a lot of the time I'll just be on Skype with my friends of like these different groups of friends and we'll just talk about video games. I have a group of friends who are huge PC gamers. They play like League of Legends, like Hearts, like a lot of the stuff I don't care about.
Wait. They're huge PC gamers and they play League of Legends. That's not okay. Well,
yeah. And it's like, okay, I don't give a shit about that, but at the same time, they'll be way into, like whatever, The Witcher, and they'll play everything.
Yeah.
But lean more towards that. Another group of friends who are way into Nintendo, and it's like I don't care so much about Nintendo, but it's like, all right, I'll still play Splatoon with them a great time. And then I have like another group that's like more kind of my range, where it's like we kind of, and actually half of this other group they don't even play video games that much, so it's like these huge perspectives, and then like talking with you like. I just like talking with a lot of people about video games, and that's kind of, again, what like the theme of the show is. But yeah, when it comes to video game news, like, there's not much. I like NeoGAF, and it's like on Twitter, I will follow people whose voices I like and respect.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, comment. What are like the communities you follow? I will be like heartbroken if I see comments that are like, I get my game news from PewDiePie or whatever. Like,
that's not video game journalism, and there shouldn't be video game.
That is the modern state of video game journalism. Is a publisher sending free copies to Let's Players. They'll stream the game for 30 minutes or whatever for set 10 days before the game is out. They are playing to an audience. They're not playing the game. They are looking at their chat the whole time, playing the game. And then once that game is out in the wild, they're already playing a different game that's pre-released. No one is just playing video games focusing on it.
And what sucks too about that is because since you'll be playing the game and you're trying to report on it, it'll already be too late for some people. Yeah. So you'd be like, hey, I'm barely now getting into, like I would say, Bayonetta 2. I'm really enjoying this game, but then if you were just like, why don't you talk about Mad Max that's coming out or The Phantom Pain? It's like I would want to talk about that stuff, and if I do get into it, it would be like first impressions, and then later on in the month, be like, hey man, I really beat this game. Like I beat this game, I really liked it.
And a part of that too is like with me, I guess it's slightly contrarian, because like I'm not interested in talking or covering what everyone else is talking about. Yeah. That's why it's like. Again, that's why also with this kind of thing we're doing is it's not hyper topical. Like we're not talking about what's out this week, what's today's news. No, we're talking about beat 'em ups from the 90s and that's what's refreshing is there's not so many people are reflective about it. So, and again, that's why a lot of the big thing is like with game collecting and like big message of the show is if there's younger viewers, don't sell off your video games.
Please,
because again, you might want to play this 10 years from now and actually like it.
Yeah, I mean, even for me, like my parents told me. Well, actually, since I was poor growing up, my parents always told me like, "Hey, you're never gonna sell." I mean, you sell things to get money, but that's yours. Like you worked hard to get it, and my parents worked hard to get me all these games. So I would either give my cousins my video games, send them out to Mexico, or I would just keep them. And obviously, I keep all my games, but send a little bit to Mexico on my Nintendo games. But just never. I would never sell my games. Yeah,
and again, like once you're an adult and you have money, like then you can buy games, whatever. But yeah, like again, I talked about this with Bruce, but yeah, again, because of GameStop and used game stores, every time a new generation would come out through 360, sell the old stuff. So like, I had Super Nintendo N64 when PS2 came out, sold all of that. When 360 came out, sold all my PS2 and GameCube stuff. And it's like, even when PS3 got to PS3, I sold most of my 360 stuff. And it's like, so I'm finally at the point now where it's like, don't sell anything.
Never. Sell drugs.
Yeah, sell drugs.
Please.
Don't sell video games, sell drugs.
Sell drugs.
This has been a long, deep episode, and there's so much more I want to talk about. So there's a few topics we'll go through a little quickly. Real fast, I want to talk about Dying Light.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll do my Dying Light. I bought because it was on sale at GameStop for $30.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for $30, that's fine, worth playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Dying Light. The first 10 hours, I had a lot of fun. It was like kind of pretty challenging. It's tough when it's night. It's spooky. But again, real fast, people don't know what Dying Light is. It's basically a reboot of the Dead Island franchise.
Yes.
Big open world zombie game. But it's like it's too much of the Ubisoft design philosophy where it's a big open world, all these really disposable, simple, dumb side quests, a lot of collectibles. It has like the white savior story where it's like really.
Okay.
Dying Light takes place in what, South America or Africa? Where's it? Or like
Africa?
some island
Somewhere.
Some island, and it's like all these like your character views them as savages, all these like poor people. Yeah. Here's this white bro descends from a helicopter to save the day, and it's so like, again, I just call it the Ubisoft narrative where like you're just this big white dude saving people. You get a chick, the bad guy steals your chick, and again, I'm not trying to be Nate Sarkeesian, but it's just like I don't know, it's just so tired. I felt playing Dying Light felt like playing Far Cry 3 and Dead Island again. But again, the first 10 hours I had fun. Soundtrack is dope. I think the issue is the gameplay is just really repetitive after a while. Yeah. If you play it in breaks or with friends, I think it's cool. But again, I kind of like marathoned it in a week. So after 10 hours, I was like, all right, time to go find crayons, deliver crayons. Time to go find duct tape. Like, it got repetitive. The soundtrack, though, is dope because it's taken cues from like John Carpenter. That's a very 70s like Dawn of the Dead synth score.
I actually muted the soundtrack.
Really? You didn't like it?
I like... For me, there's certain amounts of games where you have the soundtrack. It's like, yeah, it's nice or whatever.
Yeah.
But I like hearing everything muted just so I can hear the sound effects.
Oh, wow.
And that got me more into... Especially for like Grand Theft Auto. There'd be times where I would drive around with like no music on. Because you could hear everything, especially on the upgraded ones. But for Dying Light, since you're hearing zombies, that's what I want to hear. Like, I want to hear, the waves like rustling in the trees. Plus, I got like a 6 like sound setup, so I want to hear that stuff too.
No, that's fascinating.
But I still like soundtracks. So I mean, I'm not Dying Light. I don't even. Yeah, I can't remember what the soundtrack was like, but I mean that game is fun. I'm sad that you didn't like it.
Yeah, I kind of marathoned it. So again, condensed over.
That's probably what ruined it.
Yeah,
just marathon.
That's when I played with my friend Steve Barker. We're playing on co-op, and like, God, we're just trying to follow the story. Same thing as Far Cry 3. You have there's you take drugs or whatever, and you trip out and you see your like girl, and it's like same thing in Far Cry. Like, it was just like this Far Cry all over again. This is so stupid. But again, if you play in small doses with friends, it could be fun. So but again, I got it cheap for $20. I think it's fun. Well, again, it's not terrible. Definitely better than Dead Island or whatever.
I still like Dead Island. I like Dead Island actually. I don't like Riptide. The newest one that came out.
Is that even a sequel? I felt like that was just like expansion or DLC.
It's an expansion that was called a sequel, but it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, Dying Light's getting an expansion soon where you're going to be able to like drive cars. I don't know if that interests you, but I mean, it's a new world, new weapons. I don't know why I'm advertising it, but I want to play more Dying Light.
No, again, that's if you like it. I mean, are you a fan of the Dead Rising games?
That's the one game, because I never owned an Xbox.
Oh, Dead Rising 1 is like, I love that game.
I've always wanted to play the first Dead Rising.
They haven't like remastered or ported that over. Because Dead Rising 1 is amazing. It's on Wii. You can get a shitty Wii port.
I'm not going to fucking get that. I saw the screenshots. I'm not going to get it. But I played Dead Rising 2. Thought it was okay. The combat's definitely not. I mean, it's just you swing and then
it's the same in one. It's not. I don't know. I again, it's that Dynasty Warriors element where it's tons of characters on screen picking up weapons. I like that. But again, talking about like second impressions, I played Dead Rising 1. I loved. Got Dead Rising 2. I was kind of disappointed with it. I don't know. I don't know if I was in what headspace or whatever, but I just wasn't feeling it. So I played a little bit, whatever, and then like 4 years later, I finally like just recently I played Dead Rising 2 again. I think what it was I think I played Dead Rising 2 too soon after Dead Rising 1.
Yeah.
So, but then playing after 4 years, I was ready for a new Dead Rising. So I played Dead Rising 2 and liked it. I have Dead Rising 3, haven't played it yet. But again, maybe I'll wait a little bit and then I'll play it again.
What console did you get it on?
Dead Rising 3 is only on Xbox One. Dead Rising 2 I got on PS3. What?
It's on PC.
Oh, yeah. I'm only a console gamer.
Okay, because I played Dead Rising 3 on PC, and it crashed like almost every 10 minutes. So I started to hate that game. Then when they finally patched it, I enjoyed it.
Okay, so it's good.
I never beat it, but I enjoyed it.
I'm looking forward to checking it out. All right, and then while we're still on the topic of like I guess horror zombie games, please tell me how was Until Dawn?
Until Dawn is one of the best David Cage productions I've ever played. If David Cage ever made the game,
Would you say it's better than Heavy Rain?
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely.
See, the Heavy Rain again. I've only played the 1 out of 3 games or 4 he's made, because I know he did one for Xbox.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy Rain is funny. Yeah. It's not supposed to be a funny game. It starts out kind of like as a noble attempt. Like, oh, this is cool. Your son gets kidnapped, whatever, and you're super depressed. But like, the longer you play that game, you realize like how kind of hollow and stupid it is.
Yes.
I like, again, it's a great attempt, and like, please keep making them. They're very unique. But I think he's been already bested by like the Telltale like Walking Dead and Wolf Among Us. I think those games do it better. But with Heavy Rain, the thing that makes the game so funny and you can't redeem it is the French-Canadian accents for like little kids. There's 8-year-olds screaming like, "Come on, you asshole! You're a slowpoke!" It's like Tommy Wiseau dubbed it. Like, again, it's a noble attempt. It's a unique thing. But I think finally these other studios catching up. So we'll get back to Until Dawn. But like, Wolf Among Us and The Walking Dead Season 1 by Telltale, I think those games are great. The stories are deep. Soundtracks are awesome. I think that game does it better than Heavy Rain, where it's like adventure game decision making. I think those games are great, especially Wolf Among Us is dope. But yeah, so tell me about Until Dawn.
So I would say, I think the biggest reason why Until Dawn is so good is because, I don't want to sound like, not racist or whatever, but I think it's an American team. It's an American or European team that made it. So there's no like French translations or like trying to get like French voice actors.
Yeah.
I mean, you have like actual American actors in there. But I think the thing that I like about it the most is that I wouldn't say it's self-aware or meta, but it's just, it knows what it's doing and then it does it real well. So you start the game off, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it, but you start the game off, I guess I'm going to spoil it. 2 people end up going missing. Okay. And then they go back to that same area a year later to have like a party to like, hey, let's get this off our shoulders or whatever. And then as soon as that starts, that's when things start going bad. And so the cool thing about this game is, apparently, I mean, I've only been it once. Yeah. But every playthrough you do, like, obviously your choices have consequences. There's a whole butterfly effect thing going on, and there's like more than one killer, I would say. So you got like some guy who's like playing pranks on you. Then you have like this other weird dude who's in the mountains. Then you have people running around and doing everything. But it does. I don't want to say it takes itself too seriously, but it feels like a B movie, like just college kids going out and then they end up getting slaughtered.
Yeah, right. So whereas Heavy Rain is laughable, Until Dawn is earnest, but it works, right? You buy it. Okay. And I think, again, might just be like better. It's 5 years later, right, from Heavy Rain. So I think it's acting, production, everything, every element of it is like, it's stronger and better. Again, I'm really excited to play Until Dawn. It's just coming out in a very tough time, whereas like Metal Gear, Mad Max, Trillion, I'll play Until Dawn like maybe around October. Like that's
the perfect time to play.
Cool. I'm here. Like I've heard our friend Katie also said it's dope. Like I'm excited to play Until Dawn. But yeah,
I actually prefer that kind of gameplay because I know you have the Telltale games. Yeah. And for me, I played The Walking Dead, and I played the free one that I got, the Game of Thrones for PS4. I kind of can't get into them. Really? Only because I think the only thing that gets me out of those games would be either, I guess, the graphics or something. It's bad animation.
It is a little like, I mean,
it's like, hey, what are you doing? And like Roger will remember this. Like, what's going on? It's weird.
You can disable. I do think that's such a good like seed for a video idea, whatever. But yeah, the game telegraphs every like, make sure this decision is, make sure you make the right decision because this will fuck you up in the 4th episode.
Like, yeah, and even unfortunately, I mean, I would say Until Dawn has that kind of stuff.
Really, yeah.
But I mean, for there it kind of works because they're always playing up this whole, hey, the butterfly effect. Effect. But when you're playing like The Walking Dead, I mean, I played a little bit of it. I liked it a lot, but I know there's some people who really love those kind of games, like adventure games. And I don't see those as adventure games. They call them point and click. Yeah. Like those olden games, like Tales of Monkey Island, that kind of stuff. Those are way better. But these, I mean, I know there's an audience for them. Yeah. People like them.
I would say if someone had, I'm a huge, I don't like the Walking Dead show. I don't read the comic. I don't care about the property. Yeah. But like the video game is a really just good, like it's a really good post-apocalyptic whatever zombie story that it doesn't focus on zombies. It's more about same thing with The Last of Us, like survival, family, all that.
Human relationships and stuff. Yeah.
But I would recommend season 1. Season 2 is not as good. But if someone for you maybe because of the kind of like movies we like. The Wolf Among Us is very 80s neon reffin, like that kind of like art house action vibe of it. Okay. Everything is neon colored. The music is very dope and 80s inspired.
Okay.
Wolf Among Us is awesome because it's like, again, you're playing as this anti-hero detective who is also a werewolf who's discovering like the murder of a fairy tale princess, and there's like the three little pigs are all gangsters, and it's.
I thought.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's a really weird mix of like neo noir and fairy tale fantasy, and it's based on a comic book.
Okay.
But like I think also because that property is so far from people's conscious that it's fresh, whereas everything else is like, oh, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, Game of Thrones. It's like, okay, whatever. But Wolf Among Us works. I think the source material is so fresh that playing it was like, it blew me away. And you can get it for PlayStation for like $15, PS4, whatever. But yeah, I'd recommend Wolf Among Us.
I would recommend LA Noire.
Yeah,
that's probably my favorite one.
I still need to play LA Noire. I almost bought it for $5 at GameStop, but it was in the greatest hits case.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, whatever.
I don't like those.
One of the leading actors from Mad Men, Ken Cosgrove in Mad Men, does the like main actor in LA Noire. So I do want to check it out.
It's really good. I highly recommend that game. That game is so fun. I mean, it's fun because you're basically a detective.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Talking about second looks. I first played LA Noire expecting GTA in the 50s. It's not that at all. It's same like that adventure point and click type of. It's that game. Again, I was expecting GTA, and I think a lot of people were.
Yeah.
And so they're disappointed, but it's not that game. But again, if that's the kind of thing where it's like bought it, sold it, like I want to play that now because it's like I'm in a different place. I like after seeing Mad Men, I want 50s, 60s. So it's like that's the thing I want to go back and play. But if I was like a Twitch Let's streamer, whatever the hell, I'd play for 30 minutes. Then give it away and never play it again. But that's a game I'll go back and play. Also because it's a period piece. It's ageless.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, about the whole like people playing that kind of game, especially for LA Noire, they would say, "Oh man, the face technology looks really cool. Hey, why can't I drive this car?" Or like, "Oh man, I accidentally killed this guy." The thing for me, I knew already it was going to be like Grand Theft Auto because of the developers or like the kind of publishers and stuff. So I saw that this game was published by Rockstar. I think they only helped out with the driving and the shooting.
Yeah, what happened was it was like being developed by a different company, and I think the budget got so huge because of all the facial technology that the original publisher dropped out, and so they scrambled. And Rockstar was like, okay, let's because Rockstar's into cinematic, did it, but because they had the Rockstar stamp on it, people expected something different, and that's what crashed the game. But I will check out Until Dawn. I will play LA Noire. But yeah, today's themes: beat 'em ups. I say Final Fight.
Streets of Rage.
Or Streets of Rage. Please don't sell your games. You will want to go back and play them 10 years from now. We appreciate video games art as video gamey games.
Oh, yeah.
You will have different perspectives. So value your parents' love and adoration, and do not give away the games about you. And then when you're adults and have jobs, you can buy video games.
Yeah. If you're going to sell games, sell them to me.
Yeah.
I'll buy them. I'll take care of them.
Comment, let me know what nerdy-ass video game forum do you read. I say NeoGaf.
I say 4chan, unfortunately.
Yeah, but hey, there's good and bad. There's also one other good video game forum, Reddit Game Collecting or whatever. I think I like it. Again, a lot of like nerdy man children, but it's still fun and I enjoy checking it out. Everything else on Reddit I don't like. I mean, pick and choose, but I think Reddit Game Collecting is cool. But yeah, let me know. Video game news.
There's no
good one.
Yeah, there's none. Sorry.
Yeah, there's only one place. So then we'll go to emails, even though this episode ran long.
Michael says, when buying older games from GameStop to add to your collection, how important is it that they have a manual and original box and not greatest hits?
For me, absolutely, when buying older games, box, case, the insert, like the manual, like it's not. I don't care so much because I feel like if someone has the case, they're gonna have the manual.
Yeah.
So that doesn't destroy it. But yeah, case, cover art. I absolutely won't do like loose CDs or the fucking GameStop case.
Oh,
I'm pissed because
Jesus Christ.
When I was a kid, I bought God Hand, but it's in the GameStop case. So I have God Hand with like a generic like girl and boy playing video games on it. I have Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes in a Blockbuster. I think a Blockbuster case is cool. I have Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes in a Blockbuster case, and it's cool because on the back of the Blockbuster case is like tips and cheats
and the controls too.
Yeah, so I think that's helpful. I think that's cool. But yeah, absolutely complete in box, whatever is what it's known as. Like I need that. Greatest hits. It depends how bad I want it. Like with LA Noire, I saw it for $5 at GameStop. It was only in the greatest hits, so I was like, oh, I can wait because I know I can get that anywhere.
Yeah.
If it's like a really rare deal or whatever, I'll get it. I don't care so much. But yeah, I try to have it like original as preferred. Now the older you get, like the older you go back, like Super Nintendo complete in box is gonna be like $400 or whatever.
Yeah.
Genesis is a little easier because those came in plastic cases. So I think those are less disposable. Like there's a Genesis game. I don't even own a Genesis, but there's a Genesis game I want called Skitchin, which is a like 90s punk rollerblading game where it's like road rage or road rash with rollerblading. And it's called Skitchin. You can buy a complete in box for like $15.
That's cheap.
Yeah, man. Skitchin looks dope. It's got a punk thrash metal soundtrack. But yeah, it's essential. Yeah. All right, next email.
No blockbuster.
All right.
For me.
All right, we got another email from Keaton from America. Please read that, Keaton. You're Keaton.
All right. In the first episode, you recounted that you sold your Super Nintendo along with 30 or so games to the local game shop way back when. So my question is, if you could have kept 5 of the 30 Super Nintendo games you sold that day, which 5 would they be?
Again, yeah, that's probably like the worst mistake I made in my life is getting rid of my Super Nintendo. So I did give away some like rare games like Mega Man X, whatever. But for me, I would want to keep the games I played the most as a kid, and that would be like Super Mario World and then Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. I played the hell of those games. Again, all those have like all exits unlocked, like fully completed, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just play those games a lot. Street Fighter 2, I had 2 copies. I had Hyper Fighting and then the Super Street Fighter 2. I guess I would keep Super Street Fighter 2 because it has the like all the characters.
Yeah.
I love Super Street Fighter. Donkey Kong Country 2, another one of my favorite games. Again, I love platformers. Platformers and fighting games were like my favorites. I didn't really play RPGs until like, God, maybe even like PS3. I really didn't get into RPGs till late. And then the 5th game I would want to keep is there's this like airplane side-scrolling shooting game called UN Squadron.
I know that one.
It's Capcom. The soundtrack for it is amazing. It's based on a manga, so it's all like 80s anime art style. That game, UN Squadron, is dope. Never been ported anywhere. That's a game I might emulate to play again because I missed that game so much. But yeah, I played the hell out of UN Squadron. I wasn't great at it, but that game is dope. I wish I had that.
I didn't sell my Super Nintendo games.
So you still have everything. Yeah, so, man. You still got... Damn, Super Street Fighter Alpha 2.
I got Alpha 2, Rainbow Mika coming back, Street Fighter 5, which I'm excited.
She's only in Alpha 3, though.
Yes.
Still, shouts out to Alpha. I think, yeah, your Genesis collection's sick. God, but Back to the Future 3. Virtua Fighter 2 on Genesis is funny because it's not like Virtua Fighter 2. It's like, isn't that like 2D? It's a weird...
It's 3D, but like the frame rate is like 5 frames per second.
Yeah.
That game is really slow, and it helps too because you see like attacks coming.
Yeah.
So you have much more time to react. I think that's actually what helped me out with like beat 'em ups. So if I see something coming at me, immediately dodge that sucker and then just nail 10-hit combo.
Another email from my homie Robert Piggott. He asked, what are some video game stories that really resonated with you? For me, it'd be Last of Us, Papers, Please, and Star Wars Knights of the Republic 2, The Sith Lords. He says they had excellent stories with great characters and they made the games, great instead of just good.
Yeah.
For me, when it comes to video game stories, again, I don't play video games for stories first and foremost. I think now we're finally getting at a level. But, like, Last of Us really connect. I love that game. I'm a huge fan of The Road. So, like, just all those themes, again, I love post-apocalyptic depressing stories.
That's what I love, too.
Metal Gear Solid 3, like, made me cry at the end. Like, that... Metal Gear Solid 2, the ending of that was, like, what the fuck? But Metal Gear Solid 3, like, that was... I think that story is so badass. It made me cry. Just, it's artistic. I like that a lot. Spec Ops The Line comes up a lot. Like, I think that game is so funny because it's postmodern in terms of using, like, the trite, like, macho army guy, and it makes a story of that. Like, you're an army dude killing, and it totally twists it. It's like Apocalypse Now. So much so that there's even a video game book deconstructing Spec Ops The Line level by level. So if you haven't played Spec Ops The Line, that game is worth playing for the story alone. Combat is generic third person, but, like,
unfortunately.
The story is dope. I think it's a really cool, effective game. And then, yeah, like, Walking Dead Season 1 works, and then Wolf Among Us, like... the story didn't connect, but I think that narrative is compelling and just the whole vibe of that. What are some other stories that you think work?
Immediately, the first one that comes to mind would be Kane and Lynch 2.
Okay. I think
you have to do... Okay, the thing is with that game, it's so, like, I wouldn't say in your face about it, but it's just, hey, you're two guys, it's one of you made a mistake and you have to get out of Hong Kong, and it's so gritty and realistic, and that's what I like about it. Whereas other games, I would say like Spec Ops The Line has that sort of like it breaks down the whole Apocalypse Now kind of thing. Kane Lynch 2 kind of does that too by saying like, hey, you're playing as bad people, you're doing bad things, you shouldn't be proud of this, and it doesn't shove it in your face as much as Spec Ops The Line does by like the loading screen. Like, Do you feel like a hero yet?
The thing, I kind of wish like Kane Lynch 2 was more polished. Because like, you could definitely tell what they were going for. And it's the same studio that did like Hitman and stuff. Because it's like, they can do good stuff, but I feel like, again, if they made a new Kane Lynch, because again, Kane Lynch 1 sucks, Kane Lynch 2 kind of sucks, but like, they're cool attempts at making like a 70s anti-hero narrative.
Yeah.
And like, again, I think that you don't see that enough where you're playing as bad people in video games. You don't get that. Unless it's overly cartoony like Grand Theft Auto or whatever, where it's like, whatever. But in Kane Lynch, they're making attempts at like similar to 70s American cinema where you're playing as anti-heroes with bad, grimy endings. And like people in video games aren't used to that. We're used to like the hero winning at the end or whatever. Yeah. But like Kane Lynch makes attempts as playing at anti-heroes. Again, it's not as polished, and also they're like, I think they're from Copenhagen. Like that studio's from Denmark. Yeah. Trying to do American, like I think it's a cool attempt. You can skip Kane Lynch 1.
Yeah, you don't have to play the first one. You just start playing the second one.
Kane Lynch 2 I got the game for $5 at GameStop. Again, it's kind of shoddy, low production values, but it's an attempt. It kind of reminds me of like Hong Kong, like almost like John Woo shit, where it's like your character's in a tough situation, you're trying to fight out. Not great, but it's a cool attempt. But yeah, again, they're trying to do cinematic storytelling. Maybe they'll revive
if anything, don't hate it because of how bad the gameplay is. Like just give credit where credit is due, in which that game tried to do something differently, and in my opinion, I think it did it well. Unfortunately, just like Spec Ops, like the gameplay is pretty bad. I recommend Kane Lynch 2 if you buy it for $2.
Same. All right, last 2 emails because this is a 5-hour episode. But hey, let me know in the comments too. You like this? You don't like it? That's this is a molding experience. All right, Alex Burgos asks, what's your favorite game soundtrack and why? Also, he has a picture of him with Glover. That's on the screen. Bam. Send me your pictures of Glover. For me, my favorite video game soundtrack is Street Fighter 2 by Yoko Shimomura. She also did Final Fight and the Parasite Eve soundtrack. Parasite Eve soundtrack is awesome.
I love that game.
But Street Fighter 2 for me, because I played that game more than any other video game as a kid. Every character has their own like stage music, and that theme represents that character and the music. Like, just every track of that like soundtrack works. There's one track specifically, and I'll link it in the description. Is when you beat Street Fighter,
yeah.
Street Fighter 2. When you beat Street Fighter 2, the like credits roll. There's this really like kind of melancholy, but this like hyper like anthem of like congratulations, you did it. This like 2-minute song. It's a celebration, but it also kind of has this melancholy vibe, like your story is over. Like it's over, Yeah. But at the same time, it's heroic. I think on the soundtrack it's called like Staff Roll, but I love this song. No one like knows about it because when you listen to the Street Fighter 2 soundtrack or think of it, like there's only like Ken's theme, Ryu, whatever.
Yeah.
But Staff Roll from Street Fighter 2, the original like Street Fighter 2 soundtrack is awesome. What about you?
Before I get to that, I just want to recommend. Have you seen Red Bull has like a documentary series about like video game music?
No.
Okay, if you get the chance, check it out. Just look up Red Bull video game music. They talk to the lady who did the soundtrack for Street Fighter.
Oh.
And she goes like super in depth about like, oh, this is why I made it. So like I was on a bus and I saw these things and I got reminded of Blanca's theme. So that's why I made it.
I'm gonna check that out. Then that rules.
They talk about Streets of Rage 2 on there. They talk about Outrun. But my favorite video game soundtrack of all time would have to be Bully by Sean Lee.
Really?
I absolutely. That's like one of my like underrated gems. I love Bully so much. Like the atmosphere, the writing, the characters. That I don't want to say that game is a period piece. Like it's sort of like a 70s, 90s kind of like mishmash of thing of like New England. You don't know exactly where it's set, but the soundtrack is just every single character has their own little theme. When you go to school, it has like a cool little bass line. Like when you're walking, when you're fighting the greasers, it has like, I guess, punk greaser music.
See, that's the game I need to play again. I played Bully for a little bit as like when I was younger. Whatever, send it back. But now it's like shit. If I kept it, I could play it again.
Yeah, man.
I want to try it out.
I would say Bully is hands down one of my favorites.
All right, last email comes from Cade. He says, talk about Gex 1, 2, or 3, the Reptilian Experience. I mentioned Gex last episode when I was talking with Bruce about how I play a lot of PlayStation platformers. Mm-hmm. Gex is another series I kind of want to play through again. I only rent them, but like Gex is fine to me because those games were very like almost Simpsons. Like they were making jokes about pop culture.
Yeah.
But if you play that game today, would be Austin Powers quotes and stuff like Gex 3. The marketing is like it's like all like James Bond and like Austin Powers stuff.
Yeah.
And like I think it's even called Enter the Gecko, like Enter the Dragon. Like I want to play. I want to play a '90s platformer filled with outdated TV references. Like that's for me. Also, Gex is voiced by comedian Dana Gould, which I found out.
What the hell?
Yeah, so I want to play Gex. Gex 1 is 2D, and then Gex 2 and 3 are like 3D open world. We have to collect, like Banjo, you collect puzzles, and Mario collects stars. In Gex, you collect remotes.
Not lizards?
No, he's a TV junkie. Okay. Again, this is also pre-Netflix, so it's like, what TV shows were in the 90s?
The Wire. Was it? I don't know.
No, but Sopranos 1 did air by the time Gex 3 came out, so maybe they referenced Sopranos. Okay. I will play Gex in the far future, give a Gex by Gex review. But yeah, I really do. Man, there's again tying back to what we were talking at the very beginning with like Sonic, the edgy. All platformers back then were trying to outdo Mario. Where Mario was very family friendly. There were all these like B-list like platformers that had attitude. Like Crash he's almost A-list, but attitude. Gex. Attitude. Also, the marketing for Gex, he's always paired up with hot chicks. Yeah. Which is really kind of weird. Like, I don't know what they were saying.
The marketing.
In Crash, all these platformers were paired up with hot chicks.
What's her name? Tatiana from the first game?
Yeah.
She's like huge knockers.
Yeah, dude.
I don't understand. I don't want to. It's the same thing that happened with Space Jam. People like Lola Rabbit, and now we have this whole.
Same thing with Sonic, man. Yeah. I think it's all tied to what they played as kids. And Gex, you know what that sounds like? Rex. Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Croc. That's another.
Croc. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Rex. Rex the Tyrannosaurus Croc. I think Croc is an alligator. Either way, I will check out not Glover. Glover, that is probably the most badass antagonist.
I don't have Glover.
Fuck Sonic. Fuck Mario. Glover is a goddamn glove. You know what you can do with a glove? You can be like... Psh, psh.
Master Hand?
Yeah. It all ties together. All right. Thank you for watching the Overlong episode 2. You know why this episode's long, because Rodrigo's got a lot of good opinions about video games. Follow him, Wreckin' Rod. Thank you for watching. We have so many more emails I will save for future episodes. Feel free to send us more emails. Send me your Glovers. Send me your Gexes. I want to see what you got. And remember, don't sell your video games. Sell drugs.
Sell drugs to me. Wait.
Game over, yeah!